to Within You, a podcast that explores the unknown, the liminal space, as we all navigate between now and what's next. Yo soy Vivian Carrasco. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm so happy to have me in your ear, for you to choose to have me in your ear. Yo soy Vivian Carrasco. I'm a wisdom teacher, a mindset mentor, and I call myself a transformational guide. I am based in Fort Worth, Texas, and today we are going into one of my favorite practices, and I want to talk a little bit about how I see a practice. I drank some bubble water, some topo, before I got on here, and it was not a good idea, and I know it's never a good idea, but I still keep doing it. Isn't that interesting? So one of my favorite beverages is carbonated mineral water, but it's not so good on the podcasting. This second half of April, we are focusing in on the practice of prayer, and I hope that you get something interesting from it. I feel like I really come to a new relationship with it, and so that's partly what I'm going to share with you. But before I go into that, I want to talk about why I'm focusing on practices and what is a practice to me. So a practice, a daily spiritual sacred practice, whatever you want to call it, is anything that allows your heart and mind to be changed. Something that helps you experience my favorite word, metanoia, or you are reborn into a new world. You can view it as a sacred ritual of being human. We enter into them habitually with our whole hearts. And the key is that it takes us to a deeper place. It can be gardening. It can be walking. It can be anything that is entered into with your whole heart, with your whole presence, and takes you deeper. I also consider a practice something that is done with intention, consistently. So there has to be a repetition behind it, preferably daily, because that's why we call it a practice. We learn by having something experienced frequently over time. And there is no learning without doing. I use the example pretty often about imagining the idea of wanting to learn how to swim and deciding that you're going to know how to swim just by seeing people do it and reading about it and watching it, right? And that's, in reality, that's never going to happen. You're not going to learn how to swim until you jump in the water. So learning is about doing. So it's your own personal adventure in self-discovery and in self-transformation. And I love to say here that it's not about fixing you, because you're not broken, but just finding a practice that fits for you and then practicing it. Remembering that it has to be experiential because you have to do it to learn it, and that it is personal to you. So very personal. This final practice that I want to share is the practice of prayer. I don't believe that there is peace without regular communication with our deepest self. And there is power in our language. So that communication can be with or without words. It can be visual. It can be embodied, through movement. But it is communication. It is expression. Over my life, I wanted to share with you that my personal way that I've experienced prayer has transformed. I used to think that I had to be in a specific posture and a specific location to experience prayer. So I prayed early on because I wanted to ask for forgiveness. That was the majority of my language, my communication is, I'm so sorry. Mi culpa, mi culpa, mi culpa. That was the extent of my prayer life. So it's changed. And I wanted to share with you actually the first time that I remember praying, the first memory I have of prayer. I think pain brings us to our knees to pray. And this experience is definitely an example of that. I was fairly young when my parents divorced. I couldn't have been more than 11 or 12. I'm not going to do the math on my fingers right now, but I remember wanting to learn how to pray because I was in so much pain over their divorce. I was ungrounded. I didn't feel safe and centered. My whole world was changing, and so I was reaching out in prayer. And at the time, I think because of my youth, I said to myself, I don't know how to pray and I need someone to teach me. So I reached out to my cousin, and because I knew that she was going to catechism, to Catholic CCD, and she had learned how to pray, and I wanted her to teach me. And I thought that the extent of it was just learning the words. Once I knew the words, I would know how to pray. And it served me. I mean, it calmed me. It gave me an anchor, but I no longer live there, right? I have allowed my prayer life to grow and evolve, just like my body has grown and then not grown and grown outward and, whatever. So things change. And that was my first experience with prayer, is believing that I had to be in a specific place. I had to have a specific posture. I had to primarily ask for forgiveness. And then once I've asked for forgiveness, then maybe throw in an intention. But at first memory, it was just this memorization. Give me the right words. Help me say the right things. And sometimes my prayers now don't even have words. I mean, there could be song or there could be dance. But one thing that is constant, regardless of how you pray or what you consider prayer, is that as a human being, we need structure during our life transitions. And prayer can offer that for you. So find your way. Find your prayer. Find your method. Whether it's formal or it's intimate conversations, whatever it is. I am imploring you to address the divine. And my hunch is you already do. You really have a rich prayer life, is my hunch, because you're my people. And prayer is important to you. Maybe this episode is really just a way for you to crack open to a new perspective, to maybe a different way to see prayer, or a way to expand your prayer so that you can wake yourself up even more fully to your inner life as we pray with and for each other, right? So that we can understand the power of prayer through our direct experience. Again, the practice of prayer for me is not as a method like I used to think it was, with like the right words at the right time. And I love those in a specific setting because it grounds me, it centers me, it allows the noise of my head to sort of calm down. But other times, I don't need that as a structure. And I just need to find a way to be myself in the presence of Source, in the presence of God, in the presence of Mother, right? So I have this quote written down that I want to share with you from Dr. James Finley, who is a faculty member at the Center for Action and Contemplation. He says that prayer is a closing of our eyes, awakening to our interior. It's a receptive openness infused with love. So the questions that I invite you to reflect on around that are, how can I learn to settle into a quiet, prayerful pondering of who I am, who I'm called to be, and how I can move towards it? That's my inquiry that I offer you. If you'd like to accept it, it's just a question to settle on, because I'm not offering answers. I mean, there are no right answers. There are only deeper and deeper levels of inquiry, right? So what's going to move you? I ask you specifically. What's going to move you from ordinary awareness to spiritual awareness, to that level of awakening that happens in our heart? Some things to consider to help you open your perspective are, when do I pray? Like I said, for me, it used to be Sundays. It used to be, this is when I pray. But actually, there's a piece in the Bible, and I'm not going to quote it scripture and verse because I don't know where it is, but it says something to the effect of, rejoice always, pray without ceasing. Rejoice always. And the way that I interpret that is just that my life is my prayer, and the way that I live and express myself is my prayer. So when do you pray? I think that this also led me to this idea that I was curious when I was taking the notes for this, and I thought to myself, were we given Sundays because we had to be reminded to rest, and we had to be reminded to celebrate? Like it's something that goes so against our nature that we had to dedicate a whole day of it, or else we wouldn't do it. So I just thought I'd throw that in there with the when. Remember to rest. Remember to celebrate. And some of the other obstacles to prayer that I might have had in my youth that I don't have as much anymore is, how do I do it right? right? Like the short story I shared with you is I knew that there were, or I had this idea that there were the right words to say that would get me the thing that I wanted. And in reality, there's not. There are no right words to prayer. There are some beautiful ones. But Meister Eckhart is actually credited with saying, if the only prayer you said was thank you, that would be enough. And that quote is so meaningful to me because thank you is something that we disregard sometimes. Thank you is something that we say robotically. Thank you is something that we've become habitual to us that doesn't have the meaning behind it when we say it. And again, this is, prayer is a full embodied, something that brings you deeper. So even if thank you, even if gratitude, that expression of thanks, is the only prayer you ever said, it would be enough. So if your obstacle is getting it right, that's an invitation for you to maybe have a different perspective towards that. And then the third is how to pray. This is a big one for me. I have a couple of points for us on this. This quote is attributed to Frederick Douglass to illustrate this example. I prayed for freedom for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. So if you're asking yourself how to pray, remember that prayer is action. Prayer is movement. Prayer is doing. So I invite you to maybe know your prayer life, rediscover it, allow it to bring you into that deeper place that I mentioned that really isn't this ideal world, this identity world, right? Who I am and what my role is. And it sort of opens me up to finding a different way of knowing. That is prayer. And to know prayer as a practice. Give yourself prayer as a practice, as a way to give you the discipline to get out of your head and into your soul, into that deeper place that I talk about, into your body, so that you can learn and know a different way. Remembering that anything that you do with presence and intention is prayer. We need prayer so much because the world around us is what some folks in the military call VUCA. It's an acronym that stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We need prayer because the world is unexpected. We don't know what's ahead of us in the days and weeks to come. It is always complex. There's an interconnectedness to this world that we just don't even fathom. And we are small parts of the variables. And life is ambiguous. It's really tough to make a decision. I mean, the whole point of this whole experience is because we are navigating through the unknown, the unexpected, the unstable. We are navigating through the world around us. Prayer grounds us because it's a challenge to be human and we have to learn to love it, right? We are learning to be aligned so that we know our values and we let our values motivate us. Prayer is a communication with our soul, with that guidance, that inner GPS, that deeper wisdom that allows us to experience flow where we're moving from deeper than those shadows or those masks that we offer the world. And it's more truth. It's more real to us. This is interesting. This is fun. This is cool. My pocket practice for prayer for you, and this is where we get into the fun stuff, right? It's a body prayer so that we can bring ourselves into the act of prayer. It offers 4 positions and 4 intentions. And before I go into it, I want to invite you to replace the word God with love, with source, with mother, with whatever allows you to invite peace, whatever opens your heart and allows your heart and your mind to be changed. So if you'd like to experience this via a YouTube video, you can Google how to pray the body prayer from the Order of Julian of Norwich. And I'll also add that to the show notes on my website, viviancarrasco.com. So if you don't want to Google it, I'll add the specific link to this practice that I'm offering you, this body prayer, as a way to bring yourselves into the full act of prayer. This is the 14th century Christian mystic Julian of Norwich once wrote, "The fruit and the purpose of prayer is to be one with and like God in all things." So this body prayer is a way for you to bring yourself into the act of prayer. Your whole self, your body, your mind, and your spirit. The prayer has 4 simple postures and intentions. Await, your hands at your waist, cupped up to receive, awaiting God's presence however it may come to you. And now I invite you to reach your hands up with your hands open and allow a sense of God's presence to come, or not, and be what it is. The third posture and intention is accept. The posture is to hold your hands at your heart, cupped towards your body. Accept as a gift whatever comes or does not come. Accept that you don't know everything, that you're not in charge. You don't have ultimate control. And the fourth posture is hands outstretched, ready to be responsive. And the intention that you hold here is attend. Attend to what you're called to, willing to be present, to be God's love in the world, however God calls you to it. Those are the 4 postures and the 4 intentions for this body prayer that I share with you as the practice for this episode. I'll repeat them for you. The intention is await. The posture is hands at your waist, cupped up to receive, awaiting God's presence, however it may come to you. Then allow, reaching up, hands open, allowing a sense of God's presence to come or not, to be what it is. The third intention is accept, and the posture is hands at your heart, cupped towards your body. Accepting as a gift whatever comes or does not come. Accept that you don't know everything and that you're not in charge. And then finally, attend. Your hands are outstretched and ready to be responsive, attending to what you're called to, willing to be present to God's love in the world, however God calls you. This is the body prayer. And again, if you want to Google this and experience it on video on YouTube, just Google how to pray the body prayer from the Order of Julian of Norwich. And again, I'll offer this in the show notes or the blog post on my website at viviancarrasco.com. I want to close this episode and actually this whole series with a poem. First a quote and then a poem. How's that? This is one of my favorites. This is Father Anthony de Mello. He says, open your eyes to see what's around you. Wake up to know what's going on inside of you. Open your eyes to see what is real inside and around you. Prayer is how to wake up and live. And that's why it's one of my favorite practices. And before I close, I want to share this poem with you from Rumi. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the 2 worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Open your eyes to see what's around you. Wake up to know what's going on inside of you. Open your eyes to see what is real inside and around you. Wake up and live. It's been my absolute pleasure to share this time with you and this practice. Thank you for being here. May you be well.